you want to shape everything to your kids, right? To their ages. And so does that mean they're all sitting there with their heads bowed, eyes closed, hands folded over, praying perfectly? No, not at all.
School is out and summer is here and Father's Day is right around the corner. We previously heard from 5 different godly women on their take on motherhood. Well, in this Fatherhood series, you'll hear much of the same. The tender moments, the strong and funny moments, and the important moments of where our godly fathers share how they lead their families. So listen along and be encouraged. In today's episode, we'll be talking with my friend, Evan McFarland.
Hey.
I met Evan and his family 4 years ago at a church small group gathering. I believe that he and his wife, Katie, had just moved here, and he was our new student pastor then. But you graduated since then, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when we moved here, I was the student pastor, did that for 3 years. And then last August, I transitioned. God kind of led me into a new season of ministry. And so now I am the young married and evangelism pastor at First West.
It's a long title there.
Yeah, it is. This new role has a lot of different responsibilities that come along with it. And so tried to find a title that summarized some of that, and even there's stuff missing there. So people just kind of pick which one works best for them at that moment. So a lot of times people call me the evangelism pastor. Yeah,
just wearing a lot of hats.
That's right.
Okay. So that's all cool, but what everyone really wants to know is about your dad skills. So tell us how many children you have and what their ages are.
So I got 3 awesome kiddos. The first 2 are twins, so they're 6 years old. It's Wilder and Adeline. They're boy-girl twins. And then we also have Hazel, who is almost 2 years old. She'll be 2 in July.
Man, I just can't believe that the twins are 6. I still think of them as like 3 and 4.
I know. I do too sometimes.
I'm like, what? That's just insane.
Yeah.
And Hazel almost 2. Wow, just time flies.
That's right. The twins graduated from kindergarten here recently. So I know. It's crazy.
Gosh. Okay, was fatherhood something you always look forward to?
Honestly, it wasn't really. When I looked at the grand scheme of my life when I was younger, that wasn't something I always thought about. As a guy, I thought about sports a lot. I thought about hanging out with friends. I thought about what my job would be when I grew up, just kind of enjoying the moment. It's only so Katie and I, my wife now, we started dating in high school. It really wasn't until we got married that I began to think about kids. Of course, I wanted kids. Wanted Katie and I to have kids.
Yeah, like one day.
But I wasn't rushing that moment, and I wasn't dreaming of what they would look like and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I feel that, really. I do. Unlike most women, like all the women interviewed for the Motherhood one, I was a little different. I didn't really dream about it either. I always thought like, well, maybe one day I'll have this desire to have children, and it just didn't. Like, I was 30 and I was like, well, I guess I better start wanting to have kids or it'll pass me by.
Yeah.
So that was kind of for me, just long out there somewhere a day. And eventually I was like, well, here it is. So I feel that for sure. But, after all this waiting time, did you feel like you were ready?
No, not really. I mean, I knew that God would give me what I need to do it, but I don't think you're ever quite ready. I think, and that's what I tell younger couples all the time is you just have to go for it. You just have to do it. You're never going to be financially ready. You're never going to be spiritually ready. You're never going to have your career figured out in time. Like whatever it is, you just have to go for it and trust God that He's going to provide.
I second that as well. If someone's ever just going to wait for the right moment, there is never a right moment.
That's right.
Just like, starting anything new, like college or high school, like you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And that's okay.
That's right. People ask me all the time, like, I can't imagine starting with twins. Like you just start off with 2 kids. And I'm like, you just do it. There's no other option. You just do it and you enjoy it. And so, you get through it and God gives you what you need to do it.
So before you were a dad, what did you think it'd be like?
In my head, I pictured this probably like most guys, I pictured the fun moments of fatherhood, right? I didn't really picture the difficult moments or the tough moments. I pictured having a son that I could be in the backyard throwing the ball with. I pictured the daughter who I could dance with at daddy-daughter dances and the bedtime stories and the fun moments. And of course, for me, all those things have come true. And I love fatherhood. I mean, that's just a blessed part of it. But as I've gotten into it, I've realized that's not all that fatherhood is. And I knew that, but until you live it, I think you don't really understand it.
Yeah, and it plays a bigger role than we think.
That's right. That's right. And it makes those sweet moments even sweeter. And so, for us, we jumped right into not fun moments in our parenting. I did into fatherhood. Our twins were born at 25 weeks. And so Wilder was 1 pound 9 ounces and Adeline was 1 pound 6 ounces. And so fatherhood right off the jump looked totally different than a lot of different fathers. And I had to be strong for my family in a moment of crisis, kind of right off the bat. And so, and it was difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen where Katie's talked about that a little bit on, social media here and there. How was like Wilder's and Adeline's miraculous birth? Like, how did that affect you? Like, did it affect you any different? Like, how did it shape you as a dad?
Yeah, those are one of those defining moments in your life that I think would shape anyone. They were in the hospital for almost 5 months, and there was really scary moments in there of where we didn't know if they would live or not. And then once we got past that, just developmentally, what kind of quality of life will they have? And just not knowing those things. And so it definitely shapes you. I would say for Katie and me, Katie and I, it grew us closer together in our relationship and as parents. And then you lean into wanting to protect your kids more, I think. When they start off fragile, that Papa Bear wants to come out and protect your kids. And so it definitely has affected us. And then it realized, this past week, as I got to watch my kids walk across the stage for kindergarten graduation, I think I just cherish those moments even more because I didn't know if they would make it to that moment. Yeah. And so it makes the special things even more special.
That's awesome. Man, and Wilder and Adeline, they're just so wild and spunky and just fun, like so full of life. So I'm glad we get to have all that blessing.
Yeah, for sure.
So some parts of parenting can be intense, and you've kind of already alluded to some of that. What are those things for you?
Some things that any parent has to face is, figuring out the discipline side of it. What does that look like? You don't want to raise kids who are undisciplined. And so figuring that out, also through the process of that, realizing your own faults that you have with them and in parenting. And so both of those things make it difficult. And then we dealt with sickness early on, but any parent knows, man, it's tough in parenthood when you got to deal with whether the smallest of sicknesses or the biggest of them.
The small sicknesses is like, just no sleep.
I know it. It makes for rough nights
like,
for sure.
Gosh, you're like, well, can I take it off too?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but man, I really like how you said realizing your own faults. That's wow. Like, can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think parenthood is a great mirror that reflects back into our own life as we try to raise up our kids. And what I mean specifically by that is I think oftentimes we can want to discipline or we get frustrated at our kids for something that they're doing. But then if we really reflect on our own life, we do the exact same behaviors that our kids do. And so a practical example of that may be I may get onto Wilder for talking back to his mother when she asked him to do something. But then when Katie asked me to do something, I pop back at her. And so I did the exact same behavior he did. And so we think we're so much more dignified and polished as adults, but really we're just older a lot of times. And so it helps me realize that and show grace towards my kids. And then also in those moments where they do something and you just don't have any idea what to do, right? You're just like, yep, there's no handbook on how to handle this situation. I don't know how to discipline it. And you realize, hey, I'm not enough for this task sometimes, and I need help, in it.
Well, in the moment of needing help, what do you do with that? Like, do you ask like your dad or like your parents, or who do you call for that?
Yeah, so there's men in my life that definitely I look up to and I respect in their parenting. I would say my go-to is usually other dads around my same age that I'm just doing life with, and we talk about it. Katie also is a extreme source of wisdom in my life, and so I can lean on her in those moments. And then you pray about them, and you make the best decision that you can make.
Is there anything you feel that you could be better at?
I think sometimes I could be better at, in this whole conversation, taking time to explain things to my kids. They behave, we react and discipline, and they could be left wondering, okay, what just happened? And so taking time to really, on their level, try to explain to them why we had to do this, the long-term implications of their behavior and all those kind of things. I think I could do better
not
at
just
that
because I said so.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, but in parenting, especially 3 kids, busy life, you're just trying to handle situations.
Yeah, sometimes that's all you have time to say is like, because I said
that's right.
I'll tell you later.
Right, exactly. You'll get it one day,
Yeah, one day. Yeah. I know for some parents, like, for me, like sometimes it's like something that we all struggle with is like being present with their kids. Like, do you have any like strategies or any thoughts on that?
That's one of the things that I could definitely be better at as a parent is in those moments of when I'm actually physically present, being emotionally present with them as well. We're all busy in our lives, and so there's the tendency to, when you get home, want to rest or want to get into your phone and see what's going on, just disconnect from the world, watch TV, whatever. And so I know me personally, I have to make big efforts to actually be present with them. And so sometimes that's putting the phone away. A lot of times that's just, hey, get up out of the chair, off the couch, and go do something with them. And while you're active, then you forget all those other things that are going on.
Yeah, because I've started making that a practice for me because I noticed I've been my child comes up to me and wants to play with my phone. I'm like, oh, that's always an indicator that I've been on the phone too much.
Yeah.
So just actively putting it down. Sometimes I ask Alexa, hey, set the timer for 30 minutes. That way I've known. It's because sometimes 10 minutes feels like a long time.
It does, yeah.
And I'm like, but that's only 10 minutes. That's not good.
Right.
Yeah, like you said, just going actively playing with him, either outside or inside, pushing him in his little car or something like that. Anything that's more intentional.
That's really good. I love that. I'll try sometimes when I get home just to leave my phone in my restroom and where I won't hear it, where I won't see it. But I love your idea of, we have Google, not Alexa, but asking Google to
Fancy.
to help me, to set that timer, to put it away. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah. How do you define being a good dad?
Man, that's a big question there. I would say that there's lots to it. There's not one definition, but I would say first and foremost, with what leads me personally and my family, it would be leading my family spiritually. It would be leading them in love. I believe also being a good dad is loving their mom well, so they see that example.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the providing of their needs, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when people think of fatherhood, they think of providing the physical needs, and that is a big part, having food on the table. And obviously, I feel that responsibility for my kids, but it's also their emotional needs, their spiritual needs, providing for my kids' needs.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's interesting you say all those things. I have a listener that submitted a question she has for you. She wants to know, do you feel any extra pressure to be the provider and man of the house?
I would say yes, in some ways. Especially, I think our culture puts a lot of pressure on the men to provide well. And, I started off in the business world, and then God called me to ministry. And when that shift happened, the shift of my life was no longer how much money can I get, how big of a house could we get, or those kind of things. And that can be pressure, I feel, sometimes for my kids. Every parent wants more for their kids and wants better for their kids. And you feel that pressure of, man, am I providing enough for them? Are they getting to live out the opportunities that I want them to live out in life? And so I think you feel that pressure. But, man, the blessing I have is where that pressure is lessened is Katie is such a great helpmate and partner to me that I don't feel like I'm in that alone. I don't feel like I have to walk that alone. And ultimately, if my kids don't get the toy or the trip I want, I know they're still loved really well and they're still provided for. Yeah. But I think culturally, I think we do feel some of that pressure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I've heard a lot of some leadership tones in here. Yeah. With all that being said, what kind of Bible dad, does that well to you?
The dad I often think of that I enjoy teaching on the most or looking at the most really doesn't have a lot said about him in the Bible, but it would be Joseph, the New Testament Joseph. Yeah. And Joseph, Jesus' earthly father. And what I love is, in a similar way, I said my fatherhood got thrown off to a unique start. Man, Joseph's was the most unique that there ever was. And the way he handled that situation of honoring Mary still, of staying committed to her, of being with her, providing for her through that process, going to Bethlehem with her, all the stuff that he did to take care of her, and then obviously provide well for Jesus and for their family. I just think the Bible doesn't speak directly about him a lot, but I think we see all the indirect effects of his fatherhood and leading there. And so I love teaching on Joseph. Christmas time comes around. I love talking about Joseph. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So with all that being said, what do you think God expects from fathers?
Yeah, God has a lot to say about fatherhood. And, I think first and foremost, it's being the spiritual leader of your home, that we're called to lead our home in a way that honors God, to raise our kids up in a way that they would know him and see him. And so there's many ways to do this practically, but I think the big umbrella is he expects us as fathers to lead our home spiritually.
All right. What are some of those practical ways in doing that?
That's going to look different for every home, but in our home, what that looks like is we try to have family prayer time. Sometimes that can default, and sometimes in our culture that defaults to just before you eat or whatever.
Okay.
We try to save that before you eat time.
I was
Yeah. We try to save that before you eat prayer time for our kids to pray. That's when we allow them kind of that freedom to say what they want on their heart, so that they often pray for our food. But then it's practically more intentional prayer time. It's Bible stories and we're opening the Bible together. I even think sometimes it's just them seeing us in our Bible. And so it's not necessarily sitting down and telling the story, but they see, hey, this matters to mom and dad. So those are like those intentional moments where we're like, hey, sit down, hear the story of the Bible. But then also something I call God moments, where you're just going about life and you can weave the story of God into your story. I think it's important for our kids so they don't create a disconnected faith that God exists at church or when we're sitting down with the parents, but he doesn't exist in real life.
He's outside those wells too.
That's right. And so we always do that. And then our kids at 6 are getting to an age too where we just want to sit down and listen to them. What questions? They're asking a lot of questions about death and heaven and Jesus and, you know, spiritual things. And so just listen to them and take time to let them talk their faith out.
My child's not old enough for those conversations yet, but I have worked a lot with children. Honestly, most of my adult life, I've worked with kids in ministry in that way. And don't you just love those questions from kids? Like it's always like just bring my heart so much joy. Because to me, there is no greater joy. This is better than like being married, and even the birth of my own child is like having those faith discussions with children. Yeah,
that's just genuine.
And there's no like hidden agenda behind the question. They just genuinely just want to know, and the response is so, and you're like, yeah.
That's right.
It just makes you feel good.
And it stretches your own faith. You know, to ask those questions.
Man, I ain't thought about that. That's a good one.
It's a lot of fun to be able to do that.
Love that. So I'm glad you guys get to have that time now.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, you're mentioning the family prayer time. I know you said sometimes it's at the dinner table, but you're also seeming like there's other times you're like, hey, this is the day. I just got to know, though, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how successful are those times? Because, you know, you got some 6-year-olds and a 2-year-old. Like, how does that go?
So I think it depends on your definition of success.
Okay. Good answer.
And so you want to shape everything to your kids, right? To their ages. And so does that mean they're all sitting there with their heads bowed, eyes closed, hands folded over, praying perfectly? No, not at all. Hazel's usually running around, hitting us on the knees and stuff as we're doing it. Wilder maybe wiggling. That's right. But the heart of it is we want them to know, man, there's a God that loves you, that wants to communicate with you. And so sometimes it's just talking to them. So there are intentional moments like before bedtime, at the dinner table, other meeting moments that we have as a family. But then there's also just, hey, we're in the car, we're about to take a long drive, let's pray. And we're just talking out loud. And we're just telling God, hey, God, would you keep us safe on this drive home? Or, hey, one of the kids is at the doctor sick, and we're going, hey, let's pray right now for this. And so we want prayer to be throughout our family life, and it can look different in all the different ways we do it. So a big part of it is, hey, don't put so much pressure on yourself that it has to be quiet, that it has to be respectful, that it has to, they're kids. At the table, it
That's can just be anywhere, like, you know, just make it transient. Like,
That's right. That's awesome. Right.
Are there anything specific, like scriptures or anything you're teaching your children?
Yeah, just like wanting to teach them how to pray, we want to teach them how not just to study the Word of God, but how the Word of God plays into their life and how it affects their life. And so right now we're in a season, I would say, with our twins of some fear being there and them being afraid of things, whether through sicknesses they've walked through or just genuinely you're 6 years old and the world's really big and can be scary. And so up on their wall in their room, we have Joshua 1:9. We put that up there. So we teach them that every night. Katie does a great job of going over that every night with them. And so that's what they're learning.
Let's see. It's been a minute since I've studied that one, but I was like, be strong and courageous in the Lord.
So it's be strong. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And that promise was for Joshua, you know, at that time as he's leading the God's people into a new era, into the promised land, somewhere where he doesn't know where he's walking into. And so we tell that same thing to our kids of like, hey, you don't know what tomorrow holds. You don't know what you're walking into, but what you do know is that God is with you every moment. And I love that it starts on the positive, be strong and courageous. And so focused on, hey, we put our hands up, we flex, you know, we're strong because God's with us as we walk into it.
That's awesome. That's good. So how does church fit into how you and Katie parent? I mean, I know you're in staff and all. But, you know, how does it fit?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I love that you said you're on staff, because for my kids, they're around the church so often. They're at the church. They're maybe the most comfortable kids up there. They're always running the hallways and we're trying to slow them down and all that, you know. But I think that's an important question, because I think fathers and parents, we can err too far on two different sides of this. Sometimes we outsource our spiritual training of our kids to the church, which isn't right. And then sometimes we don't allow the church to help us enough in our spiritual raising. And so for us, we believe when we look at scripture that God has called parents to be the primary faith trainers of their children. That's where their faith training starts, is with their parents. But we also believe the church is essential in that process, that we can't do it without the church. And so the church comes alongside us to equip us to that really overwhelming task. It's a really big task to raise your kids up in the way of God. And so, at church, they learn Bible stories, and we get to continue those conversations at home from what they learned at church, on the car ride home, at the dinner table, after church. We talk about those things. The biggest part, I would say, though, more than even just teaching the Bible, is the support system the church gives us of other godly families.
Village talk again.
Yeah. It's so important, man. We need each other. We were made for community, and our kids were made for community as well. They need that around them, and we need other families that can help us. We moved here to West Monroe from the other side of the state, and so we don't have family here. Yeah. And so our church family is our family here. And so they help us raise our kids in moments of sickness. They're the ones who swoop in to help us, to take care of them. I mean, our church family is our family. And so we need that support system for sure.
That's awesome. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, all that's true, and true.
Yeah.
Agree with all that. Does your family have like a weekly Bible study? I mean, I know you emphasis on that prayer, but do y'all have like a weekly Bible study or something like that too?
Yeah, so we do something a little unique for our family. And this was, Katie and I talked about this and began to do it. We call it our family staff meeting. It's just a time where we get together, we pray for each other and with each other. We encourage one another. We go over our calendar for the week. We talk about our compassion kids. We talk about our family's finances, and we talk about the Bible in that time. And so there's a lot to accomplish in our calendar and in our busy schedules. And so we set this time aside to be present, and we go over the things that matter. Like any staff meeting at any organizational level, you go over the things that matter. And so we want to go over the things that matter. And of course, the Bible is one of those things.
That's awesome. A staff meeting. I just love that. It kind of takes me back to my teaching days. A lot of teachers have it's called a morning meeting, where they do that kind of thing, like what we're going to do for the day.
Yeah.
But man, that's awesome. I got to ask, what day did that fall on? Is it Monday or I don't know?
Yeah.
And y'all discuss finances with them? Tell me more. I got to know more about this.
For sure. So ours right now are on Sunday evenings is when we do them because, obviously I'm in full-time ministry. My wife works as well. Our kids are in school. And so that's the time we try to set aside to do that. So that's when it happens. And we talk about finances with our kids. Now, granted, they are 6 years old. Yeah. So Hazel's not invited to staff meeting yet. So she's in bed at this time.
All right.
And so I
was wondering. I was like, okay.
Yeah. She's not in staff meeting yet. She'll get that invite soon, hopefully. But the way we talk about finances with our kids, and just so you know, the heart of that was we don't ever remember those conversations growing up. Yeah. And so so much of our world is financial and understanding that. And so we want our kids to have an understanding of that growing up. But at this stage, some of the things we talk about here in a few weeks, we're going on vacation. Yeah. And so our financial update is like, hey guys, we're going on vacation in a few weeks, which we're going to spend money on vacation. So we're not going to spend money before that. So we're not going to go out to eat this week. We're not going to eat out. We're going to eat at home every night. And there's no toys this week. Right. And so Katie will come with like, hey, here's our budget for the week. Here's how we're going to spend our money, because we believe our money is a gift from God. We want to be good stewards of that. And so we show them how we use that money.
You do that. Yeah. I think that's great, because I just know I guess college and we'll say post high school. Yeah. There's so many young adults and people that are still adulting, like they're in their 30s like me, don't know that. Yeah. And they struggle with it because they didn't have that model for them. Yeah. Or those conversations just never happened, or for whatever reason. So I think that's awesome. And that it's done it with, a biblical perspective. Yeah. I think that's awesome. That's great. Thumbs up to that. Oh, man. But you also mentioned a little bit there about your compassion kids. So I just want to circle back to that just for a little bit. I think that's really cool that you involve your children with that. Yeah. Can you tell us just a little bit about what compassion kids are? Yeah.
So there's an organization called Compassion International, which connects families with children who are in poverty throughout our world. And they're directly connected to churches and compassion centers in different countries around the world. And so you send money each month to provide for their basic needs. And then that church, their compassion center that's there, helps teach them in their education, helps teach them about Jesus. And so you're meeting not only physical needs, but you're meeting educational needs, and you're meeting spiritual needs in them as well. And so you're giving up some of your resources to send it to areas of the world you never get to go to impact kids' lives.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Did Wilder and Adeline play a part in choosing a compassion kid?
This past one, so our church recently had a Compassion Sunday where we got to adopt a kid. We had one prior to that, so we adopted a second one, and they were back in their life group. And so, but as soon as they came out, we had the kid, we sat down with them, and I showed Adeline. I was like, hey, here's Roxana. She's the little girl that we're adopting for compassion. And Adeline took that literal. And so she thought Roxana was coming home with us that day. And so she was a little thrown off. And so I had to explain to her what it was. But they didn't help pick it out. But each week we give an update. We write letters. We do all those things during our staff meeting time. Yeah.
What did they think about it now?
Oh, they love it. They ask about them. You know, one's in Guatemala, one's in the Philippines. And so they're always asking about those places as well. And so they look forward. We get little things in the mail with their pictures, and it's just exciting for them. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to switch gears here a little bit. Tell us, what are your favorite things about your dad?
Yeah, man, my dad, he's an amazing father. Growing up, I really just always remember my dad being there. Any big memory I have in my life, I don't remember my dad being absent for that, which is really special. I took it for granted at the time, but now I realize how special that was, that he was active and present in my life. One of the practical things I remember, so I played basketball growing up. That was my sport that I loved. And looking over at my basketball games, and this will be outdated here, but my dad having the camcorder, the big camcorder sitting there recording me.
That's the 90s stuff. Same with my dad.
Yep, that's right. He had that camcorder, and he was recording it, and then he would show me the footage later on, and he'd cheer me on. He'd yell at the referees for me, you know, all the stuff. And so all of that just showed me how proud he was of me, and it means a lot.
My dad did a lot of the same things, and I loved it too, because I know some parents get like, oh, maybe it's a little bit different for them, but for me, it was a positive thing when they recorded me, because we talk about all the great things I did. It's like a highlight reel.
Yeah, that's right.
And I loved it. It was great. It always made me feel really supported. So yeah,
it's good.
So what are the top 3 things that your dad taught you?
That's a good question. The first I would say is loyalty. So my dad this past week celebrated 41 years at his place of employment where he works. He's been married to my mom since early 20s as well. And so that loyalty, faithfulness, consistency, those things he showed me there. He also showed me how to love Jesus. My dad also, fun side note, he was my part-time youth pastor growing up. And so he showed me practically in the home how to love Jesus and in the church. And so, and he still obviously is following Jesus, love Jesus to this day. And then I would say hard work. My dad is extremely hard worker. When we were young kids, he worked the same company he's working at now, but then he would also wake up early, go throw papers as well. He worked part-time at the church. He worked really hard to provide for us and take care of us. And so he's taught me those things for sure.
Awesome. Sounds like some good things there.
Yeah.
You mentioned that he taught you how to love Jesus. How did he do that?
Yeah, man, again, there's so many ways that happens. I would say for my dad, it was the model that he gave us. It wasn't always, my dad's not the dad. I don't remember always sitting down having these big, profound, this is us moment talks, right? That just blow your mind when you have them.
Y'all didn't have staff meetings?
We didn't have staff meetings. No, we didn't. But it was through his example. It was watching how he loved my mother and took care of her. It was watching how he handled himself at work, that he was a man of integrity, that he was never being disciplined or being worried about being fired or those kind of things. It was how he loved us. I have 2 sisters, how he loved my sister so well and took care of it. It was just the model he showed us that really embodied Jesus in our household.
Yeah, that's good. What parts of fatherhood, do you enjoy the most?
Yeah, so I believe God's created me to be a leader in a lot of areas. So I love leading my family, having that responsibility of leading them. But then on a more just fun note, I love playing with my kids, like Wilder. We love to wrestle and knock each other around. And then Adeline wants to dance and do cartwheels and all that. So fun. Hazel is just she's entering that fun season of just being goofy and running around. And so playing with my kids, I love cheering them on what they do. Wilder loves sports. He loves basketball too.
Yay!
And so, so we've done basketball, we've done flag football. I love just getting to cheer him on. It's amazing how you think your kid is the best at everything, and so cheering him on. Adeline, she does like gymnastics, and so getting to see her improve and do better at that. And so cheering them on, and then also just one of my things I enjoy the most is as a father, you just have the opportunity to speak truth and to speak life into your kids, and that's such an honor that you get that opportunity.
Ooh, those all sound like really great things. But what do you mean by speaking truth and life into them? What does that look like?
For me, speaking truth is, I told you they're dealing with like some fear and things like that. And so I think the voice of a father carries a lot of weight in their kids. And so being able to sit down and say, look, God has you. God is taking care of you. I know that because of when you were born, and I saw God take care of you in that season. And so he wasn't with you then, but now he's left you. He's still with you. So being able to speak the truth of God and of scripture into their life. But then also, when I say speak life into them, when they graduated kindergarten this week, of being able to pull them to the side and say, man, I'm so proud of you and how hard you've worked to do this. And you can see like their shoulders kind of lift up a little bit. They're just proud that their dad's proud of them. And so having those opportunities just to speak that truth in life is so meaningful to me.
Yeah, it's awesome. I have to say, like, for me as a mother, my favorite part is the responsibility of my children too.
Yeah.
Or I say children, I just have one.
Yeah.
I love that as well.
Yeah.
Like knowing that it all rests on me and looking for those moments too. Like, I don't have a whole bunch right now, but I know they're coming and I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
So I feel that, I really, I get that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm glad your kids get to experience that from you. That's a great thing. On that note, what are some things that you want your children to know?
I think any parent, we could list a laundry list of things we want to give to our kids, right? But you have to narrow it down to what's most important. And so one way that we've tried to do that, I mentioned our staff meetings earlier. At the beginning of each staff meeting, we say our family mission statement. And that mission statement emphasizes the things that we view as most important. And so that mission statement is the McFarland family will be a family that loves one another, has fun together, and helps others know the love of Jesus. And so those things really accomplish what we're trying to do, what our mission is as a family, what I want them to know. And so I want them to know that, hey, we're going to be a family that loves each other. That's be the hands and feet of Jesus, and to love our family, to love those around us. We want them to have fun in life, right? One of the things that is amazing about Christianity, it is not meant to be boring. It is meant to give life and life to the fullest, as Jesus would say. And so we want them to have
Full
fun.
life, yeah.
That's right. We want them to have fun in life, and we want to have fun in our household. We don't want our household to be a place our kids dread being in. We want to have fun with them. And so we want them to have fun. And then lastly, and I know a lot of times, maybe sometimes when you build mission statements, the most important thing should be first, but we end with ours so you remember it as you leave out.
Like
but
that.
it's to our mission as a family is to make Jesus known in all that we do. So I would say those are the important things, the intentional things we're trying to teach our kids.
I love that. I mean, staff meetings and mission statements, I'm loving this. These are some life goals here for sure. I had something a little similar. So my family might be having a Bostic, mission statement. Because I do know I came up with one for my classroom when I taught for that. And it was just a little pledge. And I'm not going to recite the whole pledge, but the three things, it was a 3-thing deal as well. It's like, I wanted my classroom to know how to respect each other. And we use the word honor. I feel like honor is a better or easier word for children to understand in my experience. And then to be peace seekers, to be people that are seeking out peace with each other. And sometimes seeking out peace is not turning the other cheek.
That's right. Yeah.
It's, having those hard conversations, but seeking it out versus putting up hands. Having integrity, having integrity, all that we do, we're going to do the best that we can do, and we're not going to cut corners. So those are my 3 things. And those are 3 things that I hope for my own family, so Caleb and I have to talk more about that. Like what it is for us, but that's my piece of it.
And the really cool thing, I'm sure you use this with y'all's, and that we try to do with ours too, is in those discipline moments or in those correcting moments, you can bring it back to that statement, And so when Adeline and Wilder aren't taking care of Hazel real well, right? We ask them to watch their little sister and they're not doing it. Hey, we're going to be a family that loves each other. And so we need you to take care of your sister, right?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because in the classroom, that's exactly how I used it. It's like, hey, is that honoring? Are you, are you honoring somebody? Is that seeking peace? Like all the time, all the time. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, for sure.
That's exactly how it was used. So, we talked about some great things here. Is there any other advice you'd give to a dad that's in a stage below you? Like maybe they're expecting their new baby, or maybe their baby is, only got one and they're like, one. Yeah. What would you say to them?
I think a lot of times when our minds first go to these places, you can think of like, hey, it goes by too fast, or hey, enjoy every moment. And I would say absolutely do those things. That is important. But I would say for me, something that impacted me, someone told me that has just greatly impacted me as a father that I would just pass on. So it's not original to Evan, but Evan's just passing on this word, is that our kids are going to know and understand us as a father. They're going to understand our love before they understand the love of God, and are able to comprehend who God is. And so love them in such a way that they know God. And when you view that's your role, is like ultimately God God knew them before you did. God loves them more than you do. And you're here to play a role to say, hey, I want to help you understand and know God. Man, there's a lot of weight to that, but there's also a lot of blessing and encouragement from that as well. And so it's just a daily reminder that I would give to anyone in fatherhood or parenthood in general is, man, love them in a way so they'll understand God.
Yeah, love them well.
And that's right.
Yeah, and in some ways you say that like that's kind of the ultimate command from God anyway.
That's right.
Like in general life.
That's right.
So I guess what you're saying is like, if you want to measure yourself and say, am I doing a good job as a dad? Well, am I loving my kids well?
That's right.
Do they feel loved this week?
Yeah,
today?
for sure.
And that could be your measuring stick. I love that. That's great. Good. That's a good word, Evan. All right. So last question. This is always my favorite one. I kind of switched it up for you guys. For the ladies, that's a little something different. But for my guys, my question is going to be, what is your favorite memory that you have so far with each of your children?
Yeah, that's a fun question for sure. I'll start with the youngest, with Hazel. And so some of these will be like specific moments and some will just be thoughts I have when I think of them. And so we've gotten to this year, I've gotten to with Hazel. So I'm off on Fridays. Fridays is one of my rest day. And Hazel is also off on Fridays and Katie goes to work. And so Fridays have been Daddy Beanie Day. We call her Bean. Okay. And so we call him Daddy Beanie Day. And so I just get to spend the day with her, just one-on-one. And when you're dealing with multiple kids, those one-on-one moments are just so cherished and so special. And so when I think of her right now, I think of those Fridays that we just get to spend together. Sometimes we do yard work together. Sometimes we go out, do some shopping. Sometimes we're watching Encanto, like whatever it is, we're just spending time together.
Let's not talk about Bruno.
That's right. That's right. Better not. So that's with Hazel. With Wilder, I would say like an experience we got to do together is he loves Dude Perfect. I don't know if you know who they are, but
I've heard of it. I have a nephew that has cousins.
Okay. There we go.
Watch it. They were into it.
Yeah, so they have a YouTube channel. They are like the young boys' dream team, right? And they're just doing trick shots and funny videos, and they're Christian based, so it's clean, wholesome fun.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, and so last fall I got to take Wilder to a Dude Perfect show, and he was in heaven. He was just on top of the moon. Couldn't be any more excited. And so it was just me and him that went to that.
Oh yeah.
And so getting to have that experience with him is a great memory we have. And then lastly, I would say with Adeline, man, it's just the daddy-daughter dates that we get to go on. I try to be intentional with my daughters. I did it with Hazel this year for Valentine's Day and different things to take them on dates. And Adeline, she cherishes those moments. And so we've done one at the church before where it's like a dance type thing, but it's also she loves El Paso. So like just going to sit down and eat Mexican food together, getting dressed up. Just those daddy-daughter dates are just.
You mean she's not a Chick-fil-A fan?
She would rather a good bowl of queso.
That's great. Man, that's my girl.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
she
great.
loves it.
That's awesome. Well, that's really great, Evan. I just enjoyed having you out this morning. And, I'm just a mom, but I still feel challenged and encouraged by this conversation. You brought some of the heat today.
Well, thank you. It was such an honor for you to have me on. And it's a blessing to be a father, and it's a humbling responsibility. And so I hope this encourages someone who listens to it.
Yeah. All right, dads. Next week, I expect you to hear of everyone's mission statement and minute notes from your family staff meetings. Just kidding. But I do hope every dad out there leaves this episode feeling challenged and inspired. I know that I did. The heat is worth it sometimes. So next week, we'll be listening to another dad. So keep your hearts open and ears perked. It will be another good one.
My name is Evan, and this is my story of the middle.
And this is your host, Brandy Bostic, and you've been listening to the Up from the Muck podcast.
Psalm 40, verse 2. He brought me up from a desolate pit, out of a muddy clay, and set my feet on a rock, making my steps secure.